resilience is that bounce back. I call it bounce back. Like I always tell my clients, because sometimes the definition is so long, and you know what I mean? Like, and they try to like, meet that definition. But I always tell it's bounce back. How you bounce back from life's most distressing challenges, whatever that means, like perhaps divorce, how you bounce back. You have kids that are unruly, how do you bounce back? You go through a financial trauma, how do you bounce back? So it's that bounce back. That's what I call it.
But could it also be kind of like a rollback? Because sometimes I do not feel like bouncing. That's what I'm saying right now. Y'all know I am Tigger. Sometimes I'm rolling. Sometimes I'm crawling. Sometimes I'm like.
But that rollback is where you process on, right? You're like.
Well, it's still resilient. That's what I'm saying. Because you said sometimes people we get this whole idea of, well, and I'm like I had some people say, well, how do you know where to start? I said, you already have.
Right, absolutely.
You already have.
You recognize through self-awareness that that you need to do something.
Absolutely. And I love your definition, because absolutely that's true. Like, and thinking like bounce back is another thing for me, is like how you cope and how you move forward as well. So through all those examples that you gave, one thing is to think about how you're coping while you are moving forward, while you're bouncing back. Mm-hmm. So that's another thing that kind of pops in my head as far as resilience.
Yeah. Well, his bounce back is different.
There are times where we're like, okay, we're moving forward, we're bouncing back. Then there's times where like, I really don't want to bounce right.
No,
I just want to sit and dwell and be upset and just like sit in it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. But that's when your girls, that's when your village, your peoples, and they say, hey, that's kind of what happened this week and today. And we're all just like, ooh.
Today, I'm having like some eye pain. I'm going to the doctor right after this. And like what keeps me moving forward and saying, like I'm showing up is what my overall goals are, so it helps me look ahead. So I feel like sometimes that helps if you look ahead and you kind of like, all right, you're going to have to hit all these humps and little obstacles and stuff. And that, but at the end of the day, like, where am I going to be at the end of that? And so that helps me continue to be resilient and,
Listen, I just got to go there because she's busting up and my eye hurts, but I'm trying to look ahead. She looking at, she like, y'all. That's why she was down to a little sideways, because she's like, can I bounce? So that's how I was getting tickled when I
showed up.
And that's the thing. And that's why when we talk about like therapists, and we kind of said where sometimes people are like, oh yeah, you're this or you're that, you're not supposed to. And like, listen, there's almost a bigger responsibility, because we do hold ourselves to a higher standard, just individually and then as therapists, but at the same time, and that's why I said it's beautiful that we three have this, because you can't just go to anybody. And even one of my clients, I was working on that with her this week, and she was saying, I really don't know who I can go to with this. And sometimes I am starting to like judge and navigate people in my life differently. And I said that, and you know what, that is also self-awareness, because you know who you can go to with some things, and it doesn't, there's nothing wrong with those people. There's a lot of people just can't handle it. There's a lot of people, you don't show me blood, I don't do juices. Oh, I'm a doctor of the mind, no juices. You show me something, I'll be on the floor. Yeah. Can't handle it. That's okay.
You just got to know you got to know your filling stations, right? You got to know where you pour, and you got to know where to be poured back into. And not everybody, like say for instance, if you and I are talking and I'm pouring into you, you may not be able to pour into me the way I pour to you. So, and when you don't recognize that, resentment starts to set in, and all these other things that are, that could be negative. Just have to know who to pour into and who's going to pour back. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but wouldn't you say with that too? And it's funny because I talked about with my college kids. Oh, last week we were doing their attachment styles.
Oh, Lord.
I go, listen, it could change. It's just because they're all looking at me like, really? And they're terrified. And I said, but it's funny. I said, because a lot of times, because, I do a ton of couples work and I love couples work, but that's what I always say too, as I said, sometimes, but here's the thing, when I'm always about love is what you do on purpose. Love finds solutions. And a lot of times it is showing up for your partner, for your kids, for your friends, when they cannot match. And that's when you meet them where they are. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, that's kind of where I love having, this here, not just professionally, but personally, because we know when, like you said last week, like, oh yeah, Robin knew. And I was like, so that was going on.
Well, and that reminds me too, like a part of, again, building resilience is being self-aware.
Oh, yes.
Knowing when we are like at a breaking point, knowing when we know, okay, we need to refocus, knowing when we got to reach out to our people to let them know what's going on. Because a lot of times, I know me personally, I hold, because of like, my role here at home, sometimes I hold everything in, and I'm like, because I gotta be strong, right? I gotta make sure that I'm showing that I'm okay. But really there's times where I'm like, I'm not okay. And I need to, exactly.
Okay.
And so I have to like tell, like, lean on like my husband or something. I'm like, I gotta check out today. There's been times where I've had to, we go to these networking events and stuff like that. I purchased tickets for these things. And the day of, I'm like so burnt out. I'm like, I can't go. I can't do it. And like, that's my limitation, my limit. So
Yep.
I think an important part of building resilience as well is being very, very self-aware.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
Well, and also, resilience is, again, I'm like, did I teach all of this last week? 'Cause I really think I did. But we were talking about giving yourself permission. Why is it that we cannot, especially strong females, and nothing in our strong males, we love y'all. But we know, we're the caretakers, we're the nurturers, especially when we're doing stuff like this. It's not like we can just have a bad day, come in and do a little data entry. Love our data entry, but we are in it all the time. And I say that a lot to my clients too, because when they're struggling, I go, listen, here's the thing, y'all know me. I'm in it, teaching it, preaching it, living it every single day. And I'm struggling. So, and it's just the same thing. I said, we got to I said, we're human.
Got to.
We are human.
Even as we're talking about last Friday, like last Saturday, because of last Friday, I was like, you know what? I'm not doing anything today. And I was home all day. And I gave myself permission to just be. Not be anything to anyone, but just be. And that's how you build resilience too. Just like you said, giving yourself permission.
Well, and that's the thing. One of my professors said to me, "Hey, Babkin," and he's like, "Robin, you're a great human doing. When are you gonna be a human being?" Oh, and I was like,
"What you talking about?"
I said, "Listen, vulnerability is a state I do not plan to break down in. No, sir." 8 hours later, I'm still on the couch. And that's the thing. Sometimes we gotta just be.
Right. And I think some people too, like, struggle with, feeling that they are less than because they haven't bounced back, as you said. Like thinking about clients and stuff, when women go through a divorce, a lot of times, and this is men too, but I know women specifically, we hold a lot of value, sometimes on family and keeping our kids, safe and together. And once we feel like we're going to step out of that role and step out of that, we automatically, it's a lot of self-blame. It's a lot of like, how can I do this? Questioning what we're going to do next. And so a lot of times I feel like moms struggle over like how they are in front of their children and showing that weakness that they think is weak, with our kids. So, and that like projects onto them as well. So I've noticed that a lot, when women are struggling, should I get a divorce? Should I break up my family? Should I do this? It's like, what is that going to do to my kids? But really you got to be raw with your kids sometimes, depending on their age, of course, age appropriate. But like if you have a teen at home and they see you struggling, that's going to show them, okay, mom is a human. She's not just mom. So I think that's one thing too to her people.
Well, and it's funny because, and a couple of things with that, because I know, we do a lot of the family things, and yes, plug in for the lighthouse, family mediations.
Yes.
But, and it's so funny because I was like, don't should on yourself. Don't should on, anybody else. And they would go, well, should is a buying word, and I always said, well, what do you want to do? Where do you see this? I said, because here's the thing. And even in that, I'm like, when I asked my students last week, I said, demographic, age-wise, developmentally, who do you believe is the most resilient? And they said, children. I said, absolutely. I said, because they ain't jaded yet. I said, and at the same time, and when you're working with moms and dads, especially in any type of, family systems, and I said, but y'all got to be careful. First of all, I said, your children are watching. I said, but your children are half you and half them. And I said, so you start saying stuff that about that partner, that whatever. I said, your child is taking that on.
Yeah, I know.
And I said, marriage is a choice. Whoever you date is a choice, but you're always going to be a parent. And I said, but the better you are, the better your children will be. And that is where that resilience comes from, you know?